Hi, this is Rudy Jones of PalmettoStateBaseball.com, and welcome to That Was the Week That Was for South Carolina College Baseball for April the 23rd. Just wanted to give a few highlights of what went on this past week and looking ahead to the next week a little bit about things going on in college baseball. Pretty eventful week for the state teams, as we'll get into that later on. Looking back earlier in the week, the Erskine Junior Varsity Team, or developmental team as they call it in Conference Carolinas, won the Conference Carolinas Tournament Championship with a 9-2 win over Shawan on Monday night. On Tuesday, Georgia and Clemson had a nice game going over at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Georgia wound up winning 5-4 to split the season series. In that game, Ryan Emmons got his first action in almost 2 months. And it was a good sign for the Tigers to have him back there in the lineup. Newberry, which was rolling along in the South Atlantic Conference, got pounded by Mount Olive 19-3 in a game that was played in Florence. Also on Tuesday, South Carolina needed some late heroics, a couple of two-run homers, to pull away from Charleston Southern 10-4 midweek. Also, Wofford completed a season series sweep over at Winthrop with a 9-2 win. On Wednesday, Coastal Carolina and College of Charleston played with Coastal, which is ranked in the top 10 of 2 or 3 of the national polls now, defeated the Cougars 12-4. Also on Tuesday, USCA can beat Southern Wesleyan, and Presbyterian got a nice win over a East Tennessee State team that was on its way down to Charleston. The Blue Hose beat them 16-3. On Thursday, South Carolina and Florida opened a 3-game series as part of the SEC's weekend package of having some games on national TV. And the Gamecocks won that game 13-3 in run rule fashion. It was kind of a surprise. But Gamecocks were playing without their regular second baseman, Will McGillis, who's been out for about 4 weeks now with a broken arm. They also lost Talmadge LeCroy to an injury suffered in the College of Charleston game, or Charleston Southern game, excuse me. I'm winging it here. So they had to shift around the infield and do some things. During the game, Gavin Casas suffered a lung injury, wound up staying in the game, but did not play the rest of the weekend. And so that was more thin, making the Gamecock defense infield even more thin. But the Gamecocks did well. Ethan Petrie hit a home run in that game. And they wound up run ruling the Gators 13-3 in 7 innings. For those of you not familiar, in the Southeastern Conference this year, if a team is ahead by 7 innings, ahead by 10 runs or more after 7 innings, the game is declared stopped. So that was a good win for the Gamecocks, getting that big win, gave them some momentum. Florida came in ranked number 3 in most of the polls. South Carolina was number 6 in most of the polls, maybe 7 or 5 in one of the other ones. But a good win for them. We'll see it turned out to be a great weekend for the Gamecocks. On Friday, Clemson went up to NC State. Clemson has been hot in the ACC lately. They went up to Raleigh and wound up winning that series, 3-game sweep. They're now 9-9 in the ACC. That's pretty good after a 2-7 start. They were in last place, 14th place, if you will, at one point in the season. Now they're up to 8th place. Of course, the top 12 teams in the ACC qualify for the ACC tournament. But Clemson's thinking beyond that now. That was a nice resume-building win for the Tigers over NC State, which has been highly regarded. Clemson has moved up into the 20s in the RPI, which, is part of the process they use to select teams for at-large berths. So whereas maybe 4 weeks ago it didn't look so hot for Clemson to get into postseason, right now they are doing well, but they do have a lot of tough games coming up. They've got Louisville, they've got Boston College, which just swept North Carolina, and Virginia Tech, and apologize, right now I don't remember the 4th team they've got remaining. But the way they're playing, they're 9-9 in the ACC right now. I think a winning record in the ACC is very much within range or within reach right now. So I think that the Tigers are looking good for the postseason if something doesn't happen over the last few weeks. Getting back to South Carolina, they wound up beating Florida on Friday and beat them again on Saturday for a sweep. And amazingly enough, the Gamecocks are now in first place by themselves in the Southeastern Conference. They're 13-4 and 34-6 overall. In second place overall and in the East Division is Vanderbilt, which is 13-5. And Arkansas and LSU are a little bit behind the Gamecocks. So, 3 weeks ago, folks were Carolina were wondering how they're going to be. It was a series of strong tests, but right now they've come through them very well to do that. And so any doubters that USC may have had, They seem to have quieted those doubts a little bit. They did fatten up the record early on some teams with not very high RPIs in the non-conference schedule. And, starting out with the sweep of Georgia, people saying, well, how bad is Georgia? Well, how bad Georgia was is they beat Arkansas 3 games over this past weekend. So, in college baseball, it kind of all evens out, it seems like. Moving on from the Gamecocks to other teams, Coastal Carolina had a big weekend series with Southern Miss. Both the teams are ranked in national polls, and they were close in the Sun Belt Conference standings. The Chanticleers won 2 of 3, and right now they have a 2-game lead over Southern Miss in the Sun Belt standings. There are 4 other teams that are 3 games back, so it's still very tight there, but Coastal's been playing well lately, and I think they're in really good shape for what may be going on from there. Looking on other weekend series. Erskine. You may have seen this on my website or somewhere else, but in Game 2 of its series doubleheader with Southern Wesleyan on Saturday, the Flying Fleet hit 12 home runs and beat Southern Wesleyan 40-8. They had 10 players, that's right, 10 players score 3 or more runs. They had 5 players with 5 RBI apiece. The 12 home runs tied an NCAA Division II record for one game by one team, and the 41 runs were a school record. Erskine's pitchers threw 151 pitches, but that was only just slightly more than half of what the Southern Wesleyan pitchers threw. They threw 301 pitches in a 9-inning game. Quite the performance there, But Erskine's been hot. They've been playing well lately. They scored 68 runs in 3 games against Southern Wesleyan. Elsewhere over the weekend, Newberry clinched the regular season championship for the South Atlantic Conference with a sweep of Lenore Ryan. It was a tight race going into the weekend, but the Wolves finished strong. They are going to be hosting one of 2 first-round pods for the tournament that will be coming up this coming Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, April 28th through the 30th. They will be playing at Smith Road Complex in Newberry against the 4, 5, and 8 seeds from the conference tournament. Wingate will be playing against Wingate is the 2nd seed. They're also hosting at Ron Christopher Stadium. They will be playing against the 4th, 5th, and 7th seeds of the tournament. And the 2 winners from those pods go on to Kodak, Tennessee in early May for a best-of-3 series to determine the South Atlantic Conference champion and automatic bid to the NCAA Division II playoffs. Elsewhere, Florence-Darlington Tech wrapped up the regular season championship for NJCAA Region 10 over the weekend with a win over Gaston College. Actually, their sweep of Gaston College on Saturday got it for them. They wound up splitting on Sunday. An interesting thing is that the regular season champion, Florence-Darlington Tech, automatically qualifies for the East District Tournament, which will be played in mid-May. That is a 4-team tournament that will decide which team represents the East District in the Junior College World Series in Grand Junction, Colorado later on this summer. The second team from the Region 10 will be competing in that East District tournament. It will be the region runner-up if Florence-Darlington, or the tournament runner-up if Florence-Darlington Tech should win the tournament as well as the regular season championship, or it will be the tournament champion that will go. So that's the teams that did not win the regular season championship have got something to play for. There's still a chance for them to go to the playoffs out of Region 10. That tournament will be in early May at Lexington County Baseball Stadium, home of the Lexington County Blowfish. Elsewhere this weekend, College of Charleston got a non-conference sweep over Western Carolina. Wofford had a big series with Samford in the Southern Conference. The Terriers entered the weekend 1 game behind Samford in the conference standings. They lost the first game to fall back 2 games and then wound up winning the last 2 games of the series and are now tied with Samford and Mercer for first place in the Southern Conference at 8-4. Elsewhere this weekend, Presbyterian won one game against Gardner-Webb in the Big South. USC Upstate swept Radford. They should have done that. Radford was winless in the conference, even though they beat a ranked Virginia Tech team earlier in the week. Also, Winthrop got 2 walk-off wins and wound up sweeping UNC Asheville in the Big South. So that was a nice series win for them. Just quickly looking at the standings or other scores to see if there's anything else of interest going on. Lander got a sweep of Young Harris. That was a nice win for them. Lander's now just 2 games below 500 in the overall standings, and they've put themselves up in pretty good shape in the Peach Belt Conference standings. USC-Aiken had entered the weekend 1 game behind Young Harris, and they wound up winning its first game. USC-Aiken won its first game at Georgia College, and they moved percentage points ahead of Young Harris. Then USC-Aiken lost its last 2 games, but they're still percentage points ahead of Young Harris, .004 to be precise, and Georgia Southwestern has now climbed into a tie with USC-Aiken for first place in the Peach Belt. It's a good conference race as it's closing out. Conference Carolinas, North Greenville was idle this week. They'd already wrapped up the regular season championship for that. Just doing a quick look to see if I missed anything else I wanted to talk about. Again, I apologize. I'll wing this a little bit. I believe that's it. My team of the week for this past week was the University of South Carolina for their series sweep of Florida. There were a lot of good performances this past week. Clemson sweeping NC State. Coastal Carolina winning those 2 games against Southern Mississippi. Newberry clinching its conference championship. Florence-Darlington Tech clinching its conference championship. USC Sumter went 6-0. Spartanburg with a 3-game series sweep. Winthrop with a sweep. A lot of good performances in the state this week, but I just felt like South Carolina being the number 3 team in the country was the most worthy of the performances that was going on. My conference standings, the rankings for the different teams by classification did not change very much. In NCAA Division I, I've still got South Carolina 1, followed by Clemson, Coastal Carolina, Wofford, College of Charleston, USC Upstate. I did move Winthrop up after their nice series win. In Division II, also it did not change much. North Greenville, Newberry stay 1-2. I did move Erskine past USC-Aiken for 3rd and 4th spots because I just saw that Erskine is playing well right now, and USC-Aiken is not playing as well as they were earlier this season. Columbia International had a 5-game winning streak snapped on Saturday in Bluefield State game. Interestingly, Columbia International had a weekend series canceled, and they advertised about 8 or 10 days ago looking for a team to play. Bluefield State was in the state to play Morris, and actually got Morris to change one of its games around from Saturday to Thursday. So they still played 3 games against Morris and got to help Columbia International out by playing a game. In junior college ranks, Florence-Darlington Tech is still my number 1, just like they have been, I think, all season. USC Sumter, I moved ahead of Spartanburg Methodist. Like I said, the Fire Ants have won their last 6 games. Spartanburg Methodist went 1-1-1 and was victim of a little bit of bad luck. On Saturday, they had just gone ahead of Lewisburg 2-1 when the rains came down and they were not able to complete the game, so it reverted back to the previous full inning, which meant it was a tie game. Then on Sunday, after winning the first game of the doubleheader there, the Pioneers wound up losing Game 2 in 9 innings on a walk-off wild pitch. That's never a good feeling to have that happen. Looking at some of the other things, the ACC standings, as I mentioned, Clemson's in 8th place now. In the Atlantic Division, Wake Forest is in first place at 16-4. Boston College is 4.5 games back at 12-9. Notre Dame 11-10. Clemson there is 9-9. Louisville dropped behind Clemson. The Cardinals were swept by Duke this weekend. NC State fell to 8-12, and Florida State got a win over Virginia Tech on Sunday to avoid being swept in that series. The Seminoles are just having a dreadful season, uncharacteristically dreadful. They're at 5-16 in the ACC. In the Coastal Division, with Virginia getting beat twice by Notre Dame on Sunday, Duke has moved ahead of the Cavaliers in the standings. Virginia and Miami are tied for second, a half game back. Then you have Virginia Tech at 10-10, North Carolina at 9-10, Pitt at 8-11, and Georgia Tech at 8-13. Looking in the Southeastern Conference, the Gamecocks, as I mentioned, are 13-4, followed by Vanderbilt at 13-5. Then Florida is at 11-7. Kentucky got the final game of its series with Texas A&M and is tied with Florida for third place at 11-7. And look out, Tennessee is on the way. I don't know if you saw any of the weekend series with Vanderbilt, but the Vols swept Vanderbilt. On Friday night, they were down in the ninth inning, got 2 home runs to win. Then they got a walk-off winner in the 11th. On Saturday, the first 2 batters were retired, and then the next 10 reached base. They wound up scoring 8 or 9 runs in that inning and wound up winning that game 17-1 in run rule fashion. And Georgia is at 7-11. They got that series sweep over Arkansas. A nice game on Saturday. The series finale, the Bulldogs were down 8-4 in the bottom of the ninth. They got a grand slam to tie it up at 8-8, and on the next pitch, they got a walk-off home run. Missouri closes out the East Division at 5-13. In the West, LSU got some late heroics on Sunday to wind up sweeping Ole Miss. The Bayou Bengals are 12-5, and they've got a 1.5 game lead over Arkansas, which is at 11-7. Texas A&M and Alabama are 9-9. Auburn is 7-11. Mississippi State 6-12, and Ole Miss, the defending College World Series champion, is 3-15. Baseball is a strange game. You just never know what is going to happen with that. It's amazing. One little tidbit: I was watching the Auburn-Mississippi State game on Sunday. Mississippi State was down to its final out. They had a runner on third. The batter hits a medium hard. It wasn't an extremely hard shot right to the third baseman, and it went through the wicket, and Mississippi State tied the game. But Auburn wound up winning it in the ninth, so all is good for the Tigers. Moving on, let's see what else I've got here. I gave you the region standings. Let's look at some of the games that are going on in the state this coming week. On Monday, North Greenville has a trip to Catawba. That's a nice non-conference game for the Crusaders. Landon Powell and his boys have not been afraid to play some of the better Division II teams in the region and also nationally based on the early season tournament they did. Jalen Vasquez, who transferred from South Carolina to North Greenville, has started hitting home runs. He hit 5 in his last 5 games. So he's really going strong there. On Tuesday, we have the Citadel at Charleston Southern, Wofford's at UNC Asheville, Coastal Carolina is at Wake Forest, College of Charleston is at Georgia Southern, and Clemson tries to keep its momentum up with a home game against Kennesaw State. Also, Erskine is at USC Aiken. May not have mentioned that. On Wednesday, several of the junior college teams are in action. Also, North Greenville's at North Georgia. Wofford is at Davidson. On Thursday, the only game going on is Columbia International at Point. That is in an Appalachian Athletic Conference game. And so the Rams are trying to qualify for the tournament. It'll be an extremely long shot. I don't think they can do it with the record they have. But they'd have to sweep Point to even have a remote possibility. Looking into conference games next weekend, North Greenville is at home against Southern Wesleyan in the Conference Carolinas. In the Peach Belt, Landers at USC Aiken. Also, Claflin is at North Georgia in the Peach Belt. The Citadel is out of Southern Conference played next week because they're playing at NC State. Wofford is off next week, so there are no games involving state schools that are actually Southern Conference games next weekend. Clemson is at Boston College, as I mentioned earlier. South Carolina is at home against Auburn. Coastal Carolina is at Louisiana, which is one of the 4 teams that is tied for third place, 3 games behind the Chanticleers in the standings. Elsewhere, as I mentioned, the South Atlantic Conference begins its tournament in Newberry and Wingate on Friday. On Saturday, Voorhees and Morris play a doubleheader in Denmark. Elon is at College of Charleston in a Colonial Athletic Association game. That is important. The Cougars need to do well in that to be able to climb up in the standings. That series actually starts on Friday. Again, I'm overlooking some of the stuff as I just try to gaze over it. USC Upstate is at home against Presbyterian in Big South Conference play. Big series for the Spartans as they try to keep pace with first place Campbell. That looks like that may be about it. All I need to mention, if I did not mention your team, I apologize. But it's been a good week, an exciting week, especially for some of the ranked teams in the state in Coastal Carolina, South Carolina. Clemson making a charge. I know that the Tigers fans are excited about that. Again, as I mentioned before, my coverage here is part of what I do at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. It's a website devoted to college baseball in South Carolina. I post daily scores and schedules. I post game updates and other news at Palmetto Base on Twitter. On Wednesday or Thursday, usually Thursday, I will do a podcast of what's going on. You can listen to a podcast there. And I would really like to know what you think about my coverage of college baseball in South Carolina. Drop me a line. Email me at rudyjones@palmettostatebaseball.com. Comment on any of my posts. Comment on our Twitter. Just any kind of thing like that. I just want to be able to hear what people think about my coverage to see if it's being appreciated at all. I know I get some feedback from some of the coaches, and I appreciate that they say they do appreciate it. I know it's more probably more helpful to the smaller college coaches because they may not have the resources to keep up with everything that the Division I schools do. But I try to treat all the teams equally as best I can. Of course, we know there's generally more interest in the Division I schools, but what's going on in a Division II school or an NAIA school is also important to its fans, and I want to at least try to recognize some of the things that are going on. I know with the way that the traditional media, newspapers, TV stations are, it's tough for them to devote much coverage to the college baseball, particularly the smaller schools. And one thing, too, is I appreciate the coverage that other folks have for these smaller schools. For instance, WKDK in Newberry. I will listen to their games whenever I can. I love doing that. Same thing with Winthrop. Their games are streamed. I'm not sure if they're broadcast anywhere, but I just I really enjoy the descriptive actions of the announcers for the radio because they're trying to tell you everything that's going on. Even though I may be sitting here watching a game on TV, I may sometimes have the audio feed up. I do that a lot on South Carolina games. Occasionally I do it on Clemson games because it's just, you find out more tidbits from those announcers, and also they just throw in little things from time to time. I really enjoy it. But again, I hope you enjoy my coverage of college baseball in South Carolina. This will wrap it up for That Was the Week That Was in college baseball in South Carolina for April the 23rd. Please contact me. Let me know if you enjoy my coverage. Rudy Jones at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. Read my stories and other coverage at PalmettoStateBaseball.com. For now, this is Rudy Jones signing off saying, nothing could be finer than playing baseball in South Carolina. Good night.